stop for no awards. You got problems, I'm gonna take care of it.
Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we're gonna be discussing the life of Swoop G from the East Side Rollin 20 Crips. Now Swoop G will be born in 1976 in Compton, California. He will grow up in a family of hustlers who had a reputation throughout the streets of Compton. His father was an OG from Looters Park. And he would grow up on Billis Road, and he would attend Foster Elementary as a kid. Now, like many kids his age, he was a big fan of hip hop, and he would start rapping as a hobby. Now, Swoop would live his entire childhood in Compton, but by his teen years, his mother would move them out to Long Beach, and that's where Swoop would develop a close relationship with his cousins. Now, most of his family on his mother's side were deep into the streets, and most were members of the notorious East Side Rollin 20 Crips. Now, the Rollin 20s had been in Long Beach since the mid-70s, originally going by the Rollin 20 Hustlers. Now, Swoop G's older cousin would be one of the first generation Rollin 20 Crips, and that was Big Reese Cup, who was well respected in Long Beach and a known rider. Now, almost immediately, Swoop G would get put onto the Rollin 20s. Now, Swoop would go out on missions, proving himself to the set, and it was said that he was a known hothead in the streets of Long Beach. Now, although he was gangbanging, Swoop still had dreams of becoming a rapper. At some point in time, he would record a demo tape and would start trying to shop it around to land a record deal. Now, every attempt at landing a record deal would fail, but eventually he'll run into another rapper from Long Beach named Lil Half Dead, who at the time was signed to Death Row and closely aligned with Snoop. But things wouldn't go as planned. Allegedly, Half Dead was acting arrogant and would start talking crazy to Swoop G in front of the OGs, and things would escalate. Now, Swoop G, being that wild teen in the streets, he would turn up on Lil Half Dead and start pressing him about running the fade. But Half Dead would turn down his fight. So at this point, Swoop G would really turn it up, taking his chain, taking his car keys. He would go on to tell Lil Half Dead that if he wanted his stuff back, he would need to pay him for it or get him a record deal with Snoop. Now, sometime later, Swoop G would get paid and would get that chain back to Lil Half Dead. But word would also get back to Snoop, and one of Swoop G's cousins from 20s will vouch for Swoop G to Snoop Dogg. Now, not long after this, Swoop G will get invited out to Death Row Studios, where he would link up with Snoop Dogg and get a chance to lay down a verse on Murder Was the Case soundtrack.
Swoop G, I hear somebody speaking up on me, 'cause when I drop mine, there was no more nigga.
Now, on Lil C-Style verse would speak on Lil Half Dead getting marked out by Swoop G.
'Cause he wouldn't even squat back. Man, we can't fuck with no niggas like that.
Now, this would lead to Snoop Dogg signing Swoop G to Doggy Style Records, which was an imprint under Death Row. But things would not go as Swoop G thought. After signing the deal, according to Swoop G, he was supposed to get a $20K advance, but the check would never come. Now, this would lead to things going sour with his relationship with Snoop Dogg, after he felt like Snoop didn't know what he was doing and he didn't know how to manage artists. Now, things would further escalate once one of Swoop G's cousins would catch wind that Snoop owed him $20K, and his cousin would threaten Snoop Dogg that if he didn't pay, that he would fuck Snoop up. But this threat wouldn't move Snoop Dogg one bit, and things would only go bad from here. Now, in 1995, things would all come crashing down at a video shoot in Long Beach for a group called the Twins, which Snoop was affiliated with. Now, in attendance at this video shoot was members of 20s and 19th Street. Now, Swoop G's cousin would go looking for Snoop and would immediately step to him, and a fight would break out. Now, according to Swoop G, Snoop would get maxed out by his cousin and ended up leaving the video shoot after the fight. But this fight wouldn't be the end of it. Everything would start to spiral downhill from here, and this would lead to multiple shootouts in Long Beach with a few people getting shot. Eventually, Swoop G would get out of his deal with Snoop Dogg and Doggy Style Records. Now, later he would go on to sign a demo deal with Atlantic Records for $30K, and immediately he would start working with Bosco Conte, a producer from the Bay Area. And from there, he would then link up with an OG from Oakland named the Governor. Now, the Governor will put Swoop G on and teach him the independent game on how to be his own boss. And eventually, Swoop G will release his first album called Undisputed, which will feature legendary artists like JT the Bigger Figure, the Loonies, and others. He would also even get a verse from Tupac, but Death Row would refuse to clear it, so the song with Tupac wouldn't be used until his release of his sophomore album in 1998.
You got problems with the punk police? Don't run from the chumps, get the pump from me. We
Now by 1998, Death Row Records was already in shambles, Tupac was dead, and Suge Knight was in prison, and Snoop Dogg at the time had signed to No Limit Records. Now Swoop G will be back in Compton, and at the time he would run into one of Suge Knight's cousins named Ronald Knight, who would ask Swoop G if he wanted to hop on a new project that Death Row was cooking up. Now a day would go by, Swoop would sign a deal to Death Row Records and go meet with Reggie Wright, who at the time was running Death Row for Suge. Now Swoop will go on to record multiple songs with Death Row, and he will be featured on the Chronic 2000, which was a Death Row compilation album. Now he will have a song called Forget Where You Come From, which was a direct shot. This is Snoop Dogg. But he didn't stop there. He would be featured on another song called Easy Being a Soldier, along with his homie named Lil C Style, where they both did Snoop Dogg along with Master P. Now by 1999, Swoop G would take his beef with Snoop Dogg to a whole nother level. Now while kicking it in Compton, he would get word that Snoop and DJ Quick had a show at the Orange Grove in San Bernardino. So he, along with his baby cousin, Young Swoop, and a few Pyrus, had planned on to head up there and cause some problems. But before doing that, he would get on the phone with Reggie White, who would tell Swoop G that if he put hands on Snoop while on stage, he would give him a Death Row chain. So of course Swoop G would take him up on that offer. He would then get on the phone with his homies from Long Beach, specifically his cousin, Big Reese Cup, who had just got out of prison, and tell them that they were about to head up to Snoop Dogg's show up in San Bernardino and that he wanted them to meet them all up there. Eventually, they would arrive up in San Bernardino at the show. His cousin Big Reese Cup would come 30 deep with the homies from Long Beach. Now at this time, Swoop G was high off Sherm and he was tripping. Now his plan was to rush Snoop as he got on stage, but his cousin Reese would tell him to hold off on that. But the fact that he was high, he didn't listen, and Swoop G would then rush the stage anyway, walk up to Snoop, who in return would punch on Swoop G. But that's when Swoop G would retaliate and punch Snoop in the face. And all hell would break loose from here. Daz from Dog Pound would take one of the stage speakers and smash Swoop G on the head, knocking him down to the ground. And that's when a big brawl would take place on the stage, with fights left or right. Now after this event, this would lead to a big divide amongst the 20s and Long Beach. And the fact that Swoop G at the time was still signed to Death Row, he and his cousin, Big Reese, would end up going their separate ways because Reese didn't have any love for Suge or any dot moves. Now after all the drama, Swoop would continue his rap career and link back up with an OG from Rollin 20s known as Key to Rock, and they would drop a song called Projects on Death Row's latest album, Too Gangster for Radio. Now eventually Death Row Records would start doing shows all across the United States, and one of their next shows would be in Texas. But before they can get there, Swoop G would find himself in trouble at the airport. He would meet a female who would then accuse him of sexual harassment, and not long after, Swoop G would be arrested, and he would be charged with indecent exposure, and he would get locked up. But only hours later, he would bail out. Now in the early 2000s, Swoop G and Death Row would attend the Source Awards in Pasadena. Now they didn't come there for any awards, but they came there to intentionally stir up drama with Dre and Snoop. Now once they got there, they would try to get at Snoop, but an OG from Rollin 20s named Big D would confront them, letting them know that if they touched Snoop, that it was gonna be a problem. And at the time, the Rollin 20s was super thick inside that arena. But because they couldn't get to Snoop Dogg, they would cause chaos anyway, and all hell would break loose.
Stop for no awards. You got problems, I'm gonna take care of it.
Now sometime later, in the midst of all this drama with Snoop Dogg, Swoop G would return back from visiting Suge Knight in prison. Now once he got back to the crib, he would decide to go down the street to go buy some weed, but as he started walking, he would notice a Cadillac truck pull up. The window would roll down, and one of the men inside would ask him, was he Swoop G? They would immediately open fire and start shooting at Swoop G. Now he would attempt to run, but he would be struck in his leg, and he would collapse on the ground. Now the shooters would drive off as Swoop G tried to drag his body back to his house. Now his neighbors would call 911, and Swoop G would be taken to the hospital, and he would recover from his injuries. Now around 2001, Suge Knight would touch back down on the streets. But according to Swoop G, Suge was acting a little bit different once he got back home. So Swoop G wanted to go up to death row to meet with Suge Knight to speak on some money that he felt that he was owed from Suge. Now once they got up there, Suge Knight would wrap his arms around Swoop G's head and start trying to sun him. He would start squeezing on his neck, basically putting Swoop G in a headlock. And this aggression from Suge would lead to Swoop G getting loose and taking off on Suge. And that's when the security will up the blicks, holding him and his cousin at gunpoint. Now Suge and the security would eventually let Swoop G and his cousin go, but things would not stop there. Sometime later, while riding through Compton, Swoop G would speak to one of his cousins who would let him know that Suge tried to pay one of his homeboys from Mob Pyru to kill him. But because Swoop G had grew up with a lot of mob members, nobody would take him up on that offer. As the years went on, Swoop G would continue rapping, but some would stay under the radar. And his beef with Snoop Dogg would start to settle down, and he actually would meet up with Snoop Dogg, who would return to Long Beach around 2005. Now in the video, you would see an entire meeting with everybody from the 20s, but you would also see Swoop G coming to Snoop Dogg's defense about everybody showing Snoop respect. But things would somewhat escalate.
We're gonna push it. If we don't love this nigga as our big homeboy and respect Cuz as a big homeboy, who gonna push it? For real, it's a time for little homies to talk. It's a time for little homies to shut the fuck up and listen. I appreciate you for standing up for a nigga, but you need to listen.
Now, according to Swoop G, he only allowed it because at the time, he was on a peace mission and wasn't trying to escalate the situation at the time. Now, over the next several years, Swoop G will be in and out of jail for various different charges. But by 2017, Swoop G will be on a different path. He will be seen online protesting out in Compton.
Yeah, man. I'm live right now in Compton, California, and this is why I'm running for mayor right here. Mayor Compton. Because this type of shit be going on. You know? Niggas don't know how to stop the violence. Police out here risking their life to save us. That's why I'm running for mayor.
And as of today, Swoop G is in his early 50s, and he's still alive and well and taking care of his family. I would like to thank everybody for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next time.